The invitation to my college reunion sat on my kitchen counter for 3 weeks before I finally decided to go. I had not seen most of these people in over 15 long years. More importantly, I had not seen Derek in 8. When we divorced, he packed his expensive suits, told me I lacked the ambition to ever amount to anything, and drove away without looking back. Tonight, the grand ballroom of the Coastal Hotel was filled with familiar faces and the loud hum of people trying to prove their worth. I wore a simple black dress, carrying a plain leather clutch. There were no designer logos on my clothes, no diamond rings on my fingers. I walked to the edge of the room, taking a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray. The evening was supposed to be a quiet night of catching up with a few close friends. That plan lasted exactly 12 minutes. I heard his voice before I saw him. It was the same booming, performative tone he always used when he wanted an audience. Derek stepped into my line of sight, holding a glass of amber liquid, wearing a tailored silver suit that looked fresh off a mannequin. He spotted me, stopped and let out a soft chuckle. He leaned toward the woman beside him, whispering something that made her laugh, then walked straight in my direction. He looked me up and down, his eyes lingering on my unbranded dress and simple watch. He was searching for signs of failure, and in his mind, he found exactly what he wanted. He stood incredibly tall, offering a tight, entirely patronizing smile. He did not ask how I was doing. He did not even say hello. Instead, he just tilted his head and let out a heavy sigh. He seemed eager to prove that the woman he left behind had stayed exactly where he left her, stuck in the past entirely and completely forgotten by time. Derek introduced the woman beside him as Chloe. She wore a bright red gown and a diamond ring that caught the chandelier light every time she moved her hand. Derek made sure her hand was always moving. He draped his arm around her waist, pulling her close, while keeping his eyes fixed on me. He asked if I was still living in that tiny apartment on the east side of the city. I told him I had moved a few years ago. He nodded slowly, taking a sip of his drink, and asked if I was still trying to get my little tech project off the ground. 8 years ago, my project was a rudimentary software platform designed to optimize freight routing. He had hated it. He hated the long hours I spent coding at the kitchen table, and he hated that it did not generate an immediate 6-figure salary. He wanted a wife who looked the part for corporate dinners, not someone building algorithms in sweatpants. When he filed the divorce papers, he told me I was wasting my life on a fantasy. Now, standing in the middle of our college reunion, he looked absolutely thrilled to assume I had failed. Chloe asked what I did for a living, her tone perfectly polite, but layered with practiced pity. Derek answered for me before I could even open my mouth. He told her I was a dreamer who struggled with the harsh realities of the business world. He said some people were just not built for success. I did not interrupt him. I stood perfectly still, letting him paint a picture of a broken woman. I knew arguing with him would only validate his ego. Silence is often the most effective filter for arrogance. I just watched him perform his little routine, standing perfectly calm and steady, quietly wondering exactly how long it would really take for the fragile reality he carefully constructed to finally crack apart completely tonight. Other classmates began to notice our small gathering. 2 of Derek's old fraternity brothers wandered over, their voices booming with forced enthusiasm. They slapped his back and admired his expensive suit. Derek soaked up the attention like a sponge. He casually mentioned that he was now the vice president of operations for a regional shipping logistics company. The men whistled, clearly impressed by the title. Derek then placed a heavy hand on my shoulder, feigning a look of deep concern. He loudly announced that his company was actually hiring entry-level data entry clerks. He suggested that I submit my resume, promising to personally ensure it bypassed the screening process. He framed it as a profound act of charity. He wanted the entire group to see him as a magnanimous executive rescuing his destitute former wife. One of his friends chuckled, telling me I should take the offer before Derek changed his mind. I looked down at his hand resting on my shoulder. I calmly stepped back, letting his arm drop awkwardly to his side. I thanked him for his generous offer, but said I was currently managing my own operations. Derek rolled his eyes, smirking at Chloe. He muttered that some people are too proud to accept a lifeline when they are drowning. My phone vibrated in my clutch. It was a message from my chief operating officer, confirming that the final legal documents for our latest acquisition had been fully executed. I did not take the phone out. I did not need to verify the contents immediately. I already knew the ink was dry on a massive deal that would redefine the entire industry landscape. Derek continued to hold court loudly, dispensing unsolicited career advice to anyone who would listen. He spoke with absolute certainty about his powerful position. He believed he was the undisputed center of the modern business world, completely oblivious to the massive storm forming directly over his arrogant head right at this exact moment. The dinner service began shortly after, and the crowd moved toward the large circular tables arranged around the dance floor. I intentionally chose a seat near the back, hoping to enjoy a decent meal in peace. Unfortunately, Derek and his entourage decided to claim the table directly adjacent to mine. As the waiters poured wine, Derek raised his glass and tapped it loudly with a silver spoon. He wanted the attention of everyone nearby. Once the surrounding tables quieted down, he announced that his company had just been acquired by a massive global conglomerate. He boasted that his personal stock options would make him a millionaire overnight. He claimed the new parent company was notoriously ruthless, but that they had personally guaranteed his executive role because his brilliant management style was utterly irreplaceable. People clapped, offering him their congratulations. Chloe beamed with pride, holding his arm tightly. Derek glanced at my table, making sure I was watching his victory lap. He added that the buyout was proof that real success requires relentless aggression, not just sitting in a dark room playing with computers. I took a slow bite of my salad, feeling a strange mix of amusement and pity. The global conglomerate he was raving about was named Apex Holdings. It was a massive umbrella corporation managing digital infrastructure, global supply chains, and green logistics networks. What Derek did not know, and what he had never bothered to learn after our divorce, was that I founded Apex Holdings 7 years ago. I built it from the ground up, scaling it from a tiny apartment project into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. I did not use my married name in business. I operated entirely under my maiden name, Lauren Brooks. Derek was currently bragging loudly about his irreplaceable executive value to a company that I entirely owned. He was celebrating an immense empire built entirely by the very same woman he always loved to mock and constantly humiliate without any hesitation. After dinner, the reunion committee organized a silent auction to raise funds for the Alumni Association. Items were displayed along the far wall, ranging from vacation packages to luxury watches. I walked over to the tables to browse the selection. A beautiful vintage grand piano caught my eye. The bidding sheet showed a current top bid of $3,000. It was a modest amount, and the school desperately needed the funding for their arts program. I picked up the pen and wrote a new bid for $20,000. As I set the pen down, Derek materialized beside me. He leaned over, looking at the bid sheet, and let out a harsh laugh. He asked me if I understood how silent auctions actually worked. He told me that writing down a fake number to look impressive would only embarrass me when it came time to actually pay. He said the organizers would not accept a bad check. I looked at him, maintaining my composure. I told him my bid was genuine and that I fully intended to pay the amount. Derek shook his head, smirking. He loudly declared that I was trying to play a wealthy character to mask my profound insecurities. He pulled out his own designer wallet, slowly removed a platinum credit card, and waved it in my face. He said real wealth is quiet and secure, while fake wealth is loud and desperate. He then wrote a bid for $21,000 on the sheet, aggressively slamming the pen down. He told me to step aside and let the real adults handle the charitable donations. I simply nodded, stepping back from the table. I did not write another bid. I knew perfectly well that I did not need to win a local auction to prove my immense financial stability. I peacefully let him have his entirely meaningless and petty little victory, knowing exactly what massive corporate reckoning was truly coming for him later on tonight. About an hour later, the venue manager stepped up to the main stage microphone. He asked for quiet and thanked everyone for their generous participation in the silent auction. He announced that they had broken their previous fundraising record. The crowd cheered, and Derek raised his glass in my direction, taking personal credit for the success. The manager then stated that a special guest had arrived to personally congratulate the Alumni Association. He explained that this guest was the founder of a major tech corporation who had just initiated a massive educational grant for the school. The side doors of the ballroom opened and a man walked in. It was Nathan Pierce, the newly appointed regional director for Apex Holdings. Nathan was a stern, highly respected executive who managed the logistics division Derek worked for. When Derek saw Nathan, his face lit up with absolute delight. He quickly straightened his tie and whispered to Chloe that his boss had arrived to celebrate the recent buyout. Derek believed Nathan was there to make a speech about their regional division's success. He began pushing his way to the front of the crowd, eager to shake his superior's hand in front of his former classmates. He wanted everyone to witness his close relationship with upper management. As Derek reached the edge of the stage, Nathan took the microphone. Nathan did not look at Derek. He looked over the crowd, his eyes scanning the room methodically. He spoke with a clear, authoritative voice. He announced that he was not there to take credit for the grant. He explained that he was simply there to deliver documents to the chief executive officer of Apex Holdings, who was quietly attending the reunion tonight. Derek froze, a confused smile stuck on his face. He looked nervously around the extremely large crowded room, searching desperately for some mysterious unseen billionaire, still entirely and completely unaware of the shocking truth, standing quietly, right directly behind his own back tonight. The ballroom grew quiet as people exchanged puzzled glances. No one knew who Nathan was talking about. Derek took a step closer to the stage, attempting to catch Nathan's attention. He cleared his throat loudly, giving a small wave, assuming Nathan would publicly recognize his recent promotion. Nathan finally looked down at Derek. His expression was completely blank. He did not smile. He did not offer a handshake. He simply nodded once, a brief acknowledgement of an employee before looking past him entirely. Derek lowered his hand, his confident posture slipping for the first time all evening. Chloe leaned close to him, asking why his boss was ignoring him. Derek brushed her off, insisting Nathan was just maintaining professional decorum in front of a crowd. Nathan stepped off the stage, holding a black leather portfolio. The crowd naturally parted to let him through. He walked straight down the center aisle, moving past the VIP tables and the expensive auction items. Derek turned around, watching Nathan approach. He assumed his boss was coming to his table to privately celebrate. Derek quickly told his friends to make room, pulling out a chair and gesturing grandly. But Nathan did not stop at Derek's table. He walked right past it without a second glance. Derek's mouth opened slightly, a visible wave of confusion washing over him. Nathan continued his deliberate pace until he reached the very back of the room, stopping directly in front of my small table. The room was practically holding its breath, everyone tracking his movements. Nathan stood straight, adopting a stance of absolute professional respect. He held out the black leather portfolio toward me. He did not look at anyone else. He was focused solely on the woman Derek had spent the entire evening mocking and belittling. The silence in the grand ballroom quickly became extremely heavy, dense, and completely absolute as everyone closely watched this incredibly stunning and deeply satisfying moment slowly unfold right before their very own eyes. Nathan cleared his throat, gently breaking the intense silence that had settled over the room. He addressed me respectfully, entirely ignoring the hundreds of staring eyes. He told me he brought the final acquisition forms for my signature, ensuring the corporate integration could officially begin on Monday morning. I took the portfolio from his hands, opening it to review the top page. Derek pushed his way back through the crowd, unable to process what he was seeing. He stood a few feet away, his face pale and contorted. He stammered, asking Nathan what he was doing talking to his former wife. Derek pointed a trembling finger at me, telling his boss that I was just a failed tech dreamer, a woman who could not even afford a proper dress for the reunion. Nathan slowly turned his head to look at Derek. The executive patience was gone from his face, replaced by a cold, unyielding professionalism. Nathan asked Derek if he regularly spoke to the chief executive officer of their parent company with such extreme disrespect. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Derek blinked, his mouth opening and closing, without producing a single sound. He looked at me, then back at Nathan, his brain desperately trying to reject the information. Nathan explained loudly and clearly that Lauren Brooks was the sole founder of Apex Holdings. He confirmed that she was the architect behind the massive corporate buyout Derek had been celebrating all evening. The realization hit Derek so hard he physically stumbled backward. All his arrogant boasting, his petty offers of charity, his desperate attempts to humiliate me had been directed at the woman who now owned his entire career. The crowd murmured in shock, piecing the truth together. I simply clicked my silver pen, quietly signing the vital legal document, perfectly calmly, gracefully letting the massive crushing weight of absolute reality finally land heavily and very directly onto Derek's arrogant, slumping shoulders tonight once and for all. The power dynamic in the room shifted entirely, leaving Derek stranded in the wreckage of his own arrogance. Chloe pulled her hand away from his arm, taking a slow step backward. Her admiring gaze had vanished, replaced by a look of sheer embarrassment. Derek's friends, the same men who had cheered for his wealth moments ago, suddenly found reasons to look at the floor. Derek stared at me, his breathing shallow and rapid. He tried to force a laugh, hoping it was an elaborate practical joke. He told Nathan there must be some mistake. He insisted Lauren was just a dreamer who lacked the drive to run a global company. Nathan did not argue. He simply handed me the recently signed folder. He respectfully asked if there were any structural changes I wanted to make regarding regional operations now that the buyout was final. He emphasized the word regional, making it perfectly clear that Derek's new position was entirely at my discretion. I handed the portfolio back to Nathan. I told him the existing operations team would be evaluated based on genuine merit and professional respect. I looked directly into Derek's eyes. I did not raise my voice or show any anger. I told him that leadership requires more than expensive suits and loud bragging. It requires building something real when no one is watching. Derek swallowed hard, the last remnants of his pride dissolving under the harsh lighting. He had spent 8 years convinced he left me behind, only to discover I had built the very road he was trying to walk on. He opened his mouth to apologize, to offer some desperate explanation for his behavior, but no words came out. The man who loved to control the room was finally speechless. The harsh reality of his desperate situation was now far more devastating and completely humiliating than any petty verbal insult I could have possibly ever thrown back at him right here tonight in this grand ballroom. I did not wait for Derek to find his words. I had nothing left to prove to him. I thanked Nathan for his time and politely excused myself from the table. I picked up my plain leather clutch and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for me, their whispers replacing the jazz music that played softly in the background. I did not look back at Derek or Chloe. I walked out of the coastal hotel and into the cool evening air. The valet brought my car around, and I drove away, watching the glowing lights of the venue fade in my rear view mirror. The drive home was quiet and peaceful. I thought about the younger version of myself, the woman who used to cry at the kitchen table because she felt inadequate. She believed Derek when he said her dreams were useless. Tonight was not about seeking revenge. It was about closing a chapter I had left open for too long. Healing does not always announce itself with a loud victory speech. Sometimes It is just the quiet realization that you no longer need the approval of people who never truly saw your value. The next morning, I sat on my balcony with a hot cup of coffee, looking out over the city skyline. My phone buzzed with an email from Human Resources regarding the integration of Derek's division. I forwarded the file to the review committee with a brief note to treat everyone fairly. True power is not using your position to crush someone who wronged you. It is having the ability to destroy them and simply choosing to move on instead. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and enjoyed the morning sun. The long emotional journey had been incredibly difficult, but it was absolutely worth every single step. I was finally free from the past, completely ready to build a bright future entirely on my own specific terms starting today without any remaining lingering regrets.